what was middle school like for you?
And I was like, what the fuck? That was a very traumatic experience for a 13-year-old boy to go through.
It all just came full circle.
Yeah, right? And I just got chills. And so I was like, people liked it. It's all good. I'm not offended.
All right. Like, this is a little bit of backstory on you. I know we're going to do more of that as we go on this season. But how, I guess, kind of going back to how being a father in 2020 has affected you, because obviously when you were probably like in middle school, you didn't have virtual learning. You didn't have a Chromebook.
No.
How
the Apple One was only a few years old when I was in middle school. If that gives you any insight on what it's like to be 48 years old, yeah.
Is that the one that was like 15 foot long?
No, it was like this big and that wide, had a little 6-inch screen.
Yeah.
And you put the disc in right here. And
my dad had one in his office because I was really little when that came out. I didn't really know what to do on it. I couldn't even spell yet. So I was like, what's this thing going to do for me?
Yeah.
And then now it's on our watch.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess how has it been relating to your kids right now when you didn't really have that in middle school? Like, what was middle school like for you?
So school is public education, which is what I had. It's very similar, and all my kids are public right now. Public education isn't much different, but it is. They teach different methods. But some of the same old rhetoric and stuff is still there. Some of that stuff never changes. Some things change, and some things never seem to change. It's a commercial from a local car guy from years back. Anyway, middle school for me was interesting. Of course, I have a middle schooler now, and she'll be in high school next year. Good Lord.
Good God.
Right?
Just like
drink?
that.
Yeah. Now I need a real drink. But middle school for me was kind of like a lot of your colleagues and probably your close friends' college years. College is supposed to be 4, ends up being 5 or 6.
Yeah, that was me.
My middle school was 4.
Oh.
Yes.
Was it a 2-year middle school or a 3-year middle school?
It was a 3-year middle school.
Okay. Because my middle school was 2 years. So that would have.
So this is an interesting part of the story, and I'm not embarrassed by it at all because a whole lot of good shit came out of this story I'm about to tell you. Really good stuff. And it'll circle back to an episode from early on, too.
Hey, that wasn't bad. I'm getting it.
That wasn't bad. Anyway, the middle school years for me were just like anybody else. They were weird. It was when boys were starting to get muscles and everybody picked on everybody. And it was, king of the hill kind of stuff. That wasn't that big a deal. Girls started looking very attractive and there were roller skate rinks and we did all that fun stuff. And, you had
Sorry. I had a flashback when I was in preschool, and I remember
preschool. Thanks. Yeah.
Shitting my pants on the way to the bathroom on skates.
That's pretty funny.
Sorry.
I got a bunch of stories around that, but I'm going to say 2 things real quick that are going to make me look and sound very old. All skate. That was the announcement they would make, and everybody get out there, right? And that meant everybody's safe. These other guys aren't going to knock your ass down. The second part was Friday night lock-in. Don't be late. Starts 11:30. Doors locked. And they would go on to tell you about, we had these lock-ins at the skating rink. It's like they don't do that anymore, right?
No.
They would literally lock the doors and everybody would have to stay in until the next morning and then you could leave. They were all night skate parties hosted by the owner of the event of the skating rink, not like a person rented it and had a party. It was it was a big deal. We did it all the time.
And I think if they still had those, we wouldn't have had COVID. Everybody would have been immune.
It would be illegal today, I'm sure. But yeah, can you imagine Urban Air or some company like that having a lock-in? It's just I think it's a great idea. But anyway, let's bring that back.
Probably a lot of babies were made that night.
No, you're talking about 12.
No, I mean, because it was like a babysitter for the night.
Oh yeah.
So at home,
at home,
home. Not at the lock-in.
These were 12 to 13-year-old people. I mean, the songs of the day back here were Journey and Fleetwood Mac and all those late 70s, early 80s, and going into that mid 80s era.
I wish I'd
Quiet Riot and some of that stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Christopher Cross.
that was a side note about that. So 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, yes, there were 4. I was very independent, and that independence gone wild produced some inactivity, some laziness, and a kind of a don't give a shit attitude. Of course, I was turning 13. I didn't care, right? Because I'm a man. You can't tell me what to do, teacher. So I'm obviously not dumb, but I'm not brilliant. I'm not a scholar of any stretch of your imagination, but I've done some stuff. But I'm a student of life. I learn constantly, right? But in that era of my day, I was just completely lazy. I didn't do the work. My parents were not around to force the work, engaged like we are today, to do the homework, to read the books, And so I just didn't make the grades. In like the last 6 weeks of the 7th grade year, I just blew it off and never thought anything about it until I got the letter the next year with my schedule, and it had my grade on it, and it said 7th. And I was like, what the fuck? And so I had to go back to school. You want to talk about building character. Your parents didn't hold you back. Your dumb ass didn't do the work, and you got held back. So I went back to school. All my buddies are going to their 8th grade classes and high-fiving, and we're all talking in the hallways, and I have to walk in those doors with that on my shoulders as a 13-year-old kid. And I go to my 7th grade class, and all the 7th graders are looking at me like, didn't this guy, you must be in the wrong class.
He's got a beard.
Yeah. He's so creepy.
Anyway, is that a man bun?
Anyway, so to put that in perspective, all my would-be graduating class moved on to the 8th grade, and here I am down here 1 year back with these other kids in the same building. Yeah, it was bad. So I still went. Wasn't a big deal. Guess what I did the second time around? I did the fucking work, and I made it to 8th grade, right? I didn't screw around. But what happened that year was I learned so many valuable lessons about not giving a shit what people think about you, because everybody thought I was a failure, because I did fail. I failed miserably, completely on my own accord, without anybody's input, and I owned it, and I moved on, right? So you can imagine all the things that were said that I worked through, that I mapped out, that I became stronger because of, and didn't really care. So when I say I don't give a shit what people think about me, it's not a joke. I really don't care. It's solid. Been doing it since 1983, 4, somewhere around there. And so
pre-88, we know that.
Yeah, pre-88. But the point I'm trying to make is that was a very traumatic experience for a 13-year-old boy to go through, and went through it independent. I still had a couple of close friends that were neighborhood kids that were still my friends in 8th grade, but everybody else was like, yeah, I'm hanging out with him. And they went the other way, right? And then, so I became closer with some of my neighborhood kids that were older, high schoolers and even college students, which was weird. And so that took me on another path. We'll talk about it another time. But that year, that second year, because I needed to figure out a way to fit in, I needed to figure out a way to make friends. That's the year I started selling candy at school and began my entrepreneurial career. That's the year.
It all just came full circle.
Yeah, right? So I just got chills. And so I was at school one day, and there were a couple of the girls that were in the 7th grade class, they were super nice to me, very empathetic. They didn't joke about it. I obviously blew it off. I was like, oh, it's no big deal. I don't care. And they were like, oh, okay, cool. And they were friends, never dated, never kissed, never hugged, real bosom friends,
They were after you for the candy green apple.
Maybe. But one of them, I do remember one of them one day, I had like the Hubba Bubba, whatever gum that came wrapped in little squares. And I had pulled some of that out, and she's like, ooh, I want some of that. And I was like, cool. And then some other little punk kid over here goes, I want a piece. And I was like, give me a quarter. And he's like, okay. He gave me a quarter, and I took it, and I was like, whatever. Started to put it back in my pocket. The other kid goes, hey, I want a piece. I was like, give me a quarter. He's like, sure. I was like, oh, what just happened here? I sold 4 pieces of gum. I chewed one, she chewed one. I think there were 6 in a pack. But I made 75 cents or $1. We can do the math later, figure it out for real, right? But that was it. And it sparked. And I was like, the next day I took like 4 packs of gum to school. And then the next day I took like 10 packs of gum to school. And then somebody was like, hey man, you got any Jolly Ranchers? I was like, yeah, I will tomorrow. And my dad was a grocery store manager, right?
Yeah.
I went to the grocery store. I was like, Dad, where's the Jolly Ranchers? He's like, they're down there in the aisle. I was like, cool. Grabbed a couple of big bags because you could buy them in bags back then, and they were probably 50 counts or something. They're not like today. And I took them. I got green apple, cherry. That was the only 2 flavors I got. I didn't get like the mixed bags or nothing. And I took those to school. My backpack didn't have any books in it, son. It had Jolly Ranchers.
So I feel like today's version of you, it'd be like, hey, here's some candy. It's kind of weak.
Yeah.
But it's what I got right now.
That's right. That's right. No, but here's what's you think about that, but here's what's funny and what's innate in the memories that I have. I would literally be like, hey, man, how many you want? He's like, well, I only got $1. I'd be like, well, I don't have any change. And they go, oh, well, I only want 1. I was like, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 5 for $1. Okay, cool. So I took their $1 and gave them 5. Instead of selling 1, now I may or may not have had change, I'm just saying, but instead of selling 1 at a quarter, I sold him 5 for $1.
Right.
When technically he should have only gotten 4. So I began to already think at 7th grade, 13 years old, here's something here I can do. I can one up the game. I can force a little bit more buying of my product just by saying 5 for $1. I didn't know what that meant. And maybe I did because I grew up running up the aisles of my dad's grocery store and that kind of stuff. Maybe I did, but it just doesn't, I don't remember ever going, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, wow.
Right.
But it was probably there in the peripheral and it just happened. But I remember that 5 for $1 shit, and it was dollar bills after that, baby. It was dollar bills.
So
never went back to quarters.
I'm just waiting. I guess I'm waiting for the day where your kid comes home and he's like, "Sup, Dad? I've been dealing, made some money off Jolly Ranchers. What do you think?" And,
Heck yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this could go one or two ways. He could follow my path or follow another path.
Yeah, right.
So, although your daughter's good at selling Girl Scout cookies.
She's good at that, and lemonade and slime and bracelets, and she's a born entrepreneur. She's been doing that since she was like 4.
I do owe you an apology.
Uh-oh, what happened?
I was the one that told her to bring the Girl Scout cookies into the booth.
Great.
When we did that trade show. But people
liked it. It's all good. I'm not offended. But to wrap that story real quick, because it's so pertinent to who I am today. It's got so many other little deep tissues that help me, kind of fiber up and it kind of wove what am I trying to say? It wove the parts of my story that gave me strength.
Yeah.
Like 3 strands in a rope makes it strong. But if one of them's titanium, you ain't breaking it. Right.
Right.
And I think some of those scars, some of those deep tissue wounds, they're emotional, like in your brain, in your heart, that kind of stuff. That's my titanium strand to my rope, and that's why it doesn't break when it gets tugged on. Like, it just doesn't break. I'm strong, I might look broken sometimes, but I'm not breaking. I'm just building up, residual reverb or whatever. So that year went by, and I was getting an allowance from my dad. At this point, I'm with my mom, and she's working as much as she can, 2 jobs. Salt of the earth, hardworking lady, and my dad's over here doing his thing with my stepmother, and I'm getting an allowance every week, and I think I'm getting an allowance like $20-$25 or something like that, but I'm making like $50 at school on candy, selling Jolly Ranchers. So I'm pulling in a couple of $100 a month at 13. Well, that's interesting to me. And so I just started thinking, how can I do something else? What else can I do? And so I started doing T-shirts. I started doing airbrush art a little bit later in my career, where I started doing like those Belle Biv DeVoe, like overalls and jackets. And I actually have a jacket here, folks. I have a jacket. You and Glasscock have your denim.
The J-Team Venom does.
And I told you I had a denim jacket. I dug it out. We're going to have a big reveal. It's hanging back there in my office.
All right. When we
not today,
make you an honorary member of the J-Team.
That's right. So anyway, that kind of stuff really formulated who I am and how I execute today, and how I've just always thought the way I think now.
Yeah.
And so if you have any of those experiences and you're down on yourself, get back up and do something, even if it's just go get a job. You don't have to be a world-class entrepreneur doing a bunch of independent things. Just go get a job and do a good job at what you do.
So I guess like wrapping up and kind of coming full circle, what is the one thing you want your kids to know now that would instill that when they get into middle school? Like, how do you approach, like, you get hit, get back up, or with
The one thing I want all my kids to know at whatever age, hopefully it's sooner than later, is that no one else's opinion matters except their own about themselves. Fuck everybody else. Period. It's just the way it is. You can't dwell and think about the hurtful words or the misspoken or the misinterpreted dialogue of two people over by that locker or one person at that drive-thru or one person at that movie theater. Forget it. It doesn't matter.
What about parents?
Same thing. Your parents have sway and they have an opinion, but it doesn't matter in the end. You have to do you. You have to follow your path. You just do. If you don't want to be a doctor and mom and dad have only ever talked about you being a doctor your entire life, you cannot be a doctor because you don't want it. You just don't. You can't do that. So it's not a disservice. You're a completely separate individual. You have DNA and you share chromosomes, things like that. Like all that stuff came from there, but guess what? It came from someone else before them and someone else before them and someone else before them. You don't owe them anything except the respect and reverence of keeping you in care until you reached adulthood so you could make your own decisions.
Yeah.
That's it. After that, you can do you, man, and you have to. And you can't start when you're an adult. You can't start at 18. You got to start a little bit younger. You're discovering, you're finding yourself. You have to listen to your parents. You have to obey the rules. Even when you become an adult, you have to obey the rules. There's rules. Don't drive on that side of the road. That's a very good one to follow. You know, do not enter. That's a pretty good one to follow too. I mean, you know, like do not steal, do not. So you have to follow the rules and you have to obey your parents. But once you get to a certain age, you need to discover and become who you're going to be. And that may take you 30 years and that's okay. You know,
I think that's what happened for me.
And that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that because everything is a part of the process. Everything is a part of your journey. You know, it's one big long path that goes from here to there and it stops. And if you put that on a sideways rail and you look at the timeline of existence, it's really about that long. It looks like it's this long, but when you turn it this way and look at it from the side, it's like less than a human hair width.
Yeah,
you know?
it's kind of like a wheel in the sky that keeps on turning.
Yeah,
because I don't know where I will be tomorrow.
That's right. Oh, God. Journey, man. Anyway, so those are the things to me that are extremely important to instill into my kids, and that's number one. I think if you can get past I don't care what other people think about me, and I'm going to do me, I'm going to follow my path, then I think everything else kind of falls into place. Because I genuinely think that most people are good people and they're just going to do good stuff. I think people harbor hurtful feelings and thoughts and things like that, and they don't let them go because they care so much about those other opinions that those internalized become daggers, and then those daggers get yielded.
Yeah.
Right. And so you attack other people because you've been attacked, instead of just letting that go and being a good person and doing the right thing.
Man, you know, that kind of hits close to home because like I had a really good friend that was very influential when I went through a divorce, and he picked up on the fact that anytime we would go somewhere, I would be looking around the room because people knew who I was, knew my dad, they knew I did comedy, and I'm looking around the room to see how I know. I still do it to this day because I'm a natural networker. It's what I do. And so they broke me of the habit of doing that. And what made me realize was I could experience the moment more of the people that I'm around. Yeah. It's not as much people that I'm not sitting at a table with, but it's people that I'm, you know, friends we're going out to dinner with. Yeah. You know, and really to take that in. And then if someone sees me, they come up and talk to me.
Right.
But it was freedom when I finally got away from that.
You get in the moment.
Yeah.
And not hovering in the peripheral of the moment.
Right.
Wondering who's looking, who's saying, who's talking, who's not, who you see, and trying to focus on that particular party or that particular event or whatever you're at.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, you got to lose yourself in the moment. Mm-hmm. You only get one shot. Opportunity knocks. There's only one chance to blow.
Oh my gosh, dude. You're such an M&M. Anyway, that was some pretty deep stuff, man. There's so many more memories that popped in my head and tried to infiltrate that story.
So this is like the front of the onion.
I mean, just
so
think,
we really didn't even get deep. Is what you're trying to say?
It's not even. Think about a tree branch. I gave you the main branch that went from here to here, and there's all these other little ones that go off of those. all these experiences, all these things, just from that 7 to 13 year range, that 6 year. And everybody has it, you know. I think mine, to me, is not any more interesting than anyone else's, but it's a part of my story, and it's kind of who I am. I give certain advice and insight because of the experiences that I've had. And hopefully someone will hear or see or read, and it helps them too, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not... Nothing that I do is intended to alleviate your own experience or suffering.
Right.
It's not, hey, watch out. Don't go in there. You can't hit that pothole because then you're going to hurt. I want you to hurt. I want you to have some downtime. I want you to get punched in the face. Otherwise, you're just going to live in this false reality of everything's great.
Well, I think that's why, like, you know, last podcast, you asked me what was my number one best thing that's happened to me.
And you said, I got kicked
in the
teeth.
balls,
Yeah, lost,
you know, or teeth, whatever.
Lost the deal. Say. Yeah.
And so, because I think you grow from those things.
For sure.
So
there's no other way around it. You have to go. And that's one thing we discussed, and I think I've mentioned it before. How do we teach our children suffering? Because that's where there's growth a lot of times. And so you got to let them fail. Speaking of suffering and letting them fail, we bought a trampoline several years ago. And it had those nets on the side with the sticks.
Yeah.
I never put those up. But I did put the padding around the outside because I was like, I'll give a nod to my spouse. She was very interested in their safety. And I was like, yeah, I hope they fall and break something, but not really. Anyway, the pad has deteriorated over the last couple of years. And so 3 or 4 days ago, last weekend, Saturday morning, it was blowing in the wind. I was like, I'm done with this shit. I went out there and yanked it off and threw it in the trash can. So now I have an old school trampoline, springs a showing, pipe rail a looking, better watch your ass because it's going to get toe up, you know?
Yeah.
And so my kids, you know, they used to be real rogue and get right up to the edge of that thing and slip through the padding and get hurt. You ought to see how far they jump away from it now. They know that it's a danger. You know, but by putting that pad there, which was stupid, it was just a little piece of vinyl with that much foam in it. It wasn't going to protect you from anything, maybe a scratch, but not the internal injury from falling on something like that. And not having those nets where they can't jump around and fall out. It's just like, you know what? You fall off, it hurts. Guess what?
Yeah.
Learn to not fall off.
Right.
And when you do, learn how not to do that again.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. It's not intentional. I'm not trying to, you know, abuse my children, but it's like, let's let go of some of these parameters and let them freaking fail.
Oh, yeah.
My 2 boys that play on club soccer, they lose. It sucks. They don't get a trophy. It's number one gets the prize. Nobody else matters.
You don't play upwards.
No. And there's nothing wrong with those programs if they have other avenues that they're receiving that loss. You have to lose to win.
Right.
Like you just because not 100% of the time, but it's good for you to lose. It's good for you to feel that pain. And so, I want my kids to, you know that there's boundaries out there. I had a good discussion about boundaries the other day with my daughter. I got a book back there I'm giving her that I've read several times.
Is it called Boundaries?
It's called Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud.
It's a good one.
It's a great book. There's a follow-up to that too. But, you know, so many things that pop in my head while we're doing these things, while we're doing the podcast and talking and doing life together when we go hang out and you're here hanging out and doing your deals. It's been, we're a year and a half into this thing as far as like relationally doing this. We started in February of 19. It's now September. So that's 16 months, somewhere in that range.
Yeah. Cause I remember when I first texted you about it, I was on a plane to Vegas listening to, I'm going to name drop right here because I wish he would follow you for now, like already. Hashtag Gary Vaynerchuk at Gary V. I was listening to hashtag Crush It, and that inspired me to say, hey, let's do this podcast. That's when I reached
don't
out
wait.
to you.
Do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
So
it's been good, man. You know, we're planning on a whole lot more stuff now that we have feet to the legs of our media company. We've got some things rolling. These guys are getting really creative and doing some stuff, and I'm interested to see where the next 30 days is, and 90 days, and 6 months, and cool stuff. It's, you know, It's a blast. It's almost, this is isn't it kind of like therapy what we're doing? You're talking to me and you're asking me questions for growth, and I'm giving you insights and stories. It's very therapeutic if it's not therapy.
And right now this is the only stage I have to perform on because of COVID. So
you're only here for the applause. That's right.
Yeah, I don't need that applause. No, I'm kidding.
We'll jump into some other stuff that's related to that in the future, but this was I think we went so long, this is going to be a part 1 and part 2.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's it.
All right, thanks everybody for listening and following along and doing what you do. Be sure to subscribe and share this with somebody else in your world that you think might benefit from it, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
That was creepy.
Yeah.